Town Planning Board will come to order for October 4th, 2017. We've got some bills to pay. We have a bill for Telegram and Gazette for $348. Petty cash postage for $42.86. The invoices are all included as read. Do I have a motion to accept the bills as read?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a little bit of correspondence here. It's from Graves Engineering, dated September 27th. It's Gunther Estate Solar. It's from Graves Engineering. It's just a pre-construction meeting that he had up there. I'll pass it around if somebody wants to read it. We've got two public hearing notices from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Charlton. According with the Zoning Board of Appeals, you are hereby notified of a public hearing on October 24th, 2017, that a Tammy Michelle and Richard Stearns petition for property located at 137 Southbridge Road, Assessor Map 44, Block B, Lot 8, has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit / variance for the town of Charlton zoning ordinance. Presently located on the premise is Stearns Meat Market and Stearns Family Resident. Lot is located in an area zone IG. The petitioner seeks to build a water boosting pump station as part of the larger town of Charlton water main project. And Zoning Board of Appeals has another public hearing on the 24th. It is for Peter Hughes, petition for the property located at 67 South Charlton Shore Road, Assessor Map 83A, Block G, Lot 25, has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit / variance of the town of Charlton zoning ordinance. Presently located on the premise is a single-family home. Lot is located in the area zone agricultural. The petitioner seeks to expand the existing structure. And that's it for correspondence and bills. And we don't have a public hearing for 7:15. You've got anything you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we could do the 4 permit administrations first, if you'd like. One of them is you need to vote just to ratify the signing of the Mylar for the Gunter Estates reduction. And then over the course of the evening, if members could, or even after the meeting, because it takes a few moments each, we have to sign the Mylar for the applicant to put the revised redesigned subdivision on record at the registry, and we have to sign 1 print copy to keep in this office. Because it's a large project, there's 19 sheets, so that's 38 total. So if you vote to ratify it right now, and even if you don't have the time tonight, any member can come in tomorrow if we get a little tied up with that, because 38 times 4, you've got a lot of signatures. But I'd recommend first a motion and a vote to ratify the Mylar signing.
I'd like to make a motion that we ratify the signing for the Gunther Estate subdivision.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The second permit administrative item is we have a request from R.H. White for the annual approval extension for their Tucker Farm Estate subdivision that they haven't built yet on Smith Road. Mr. White is requesting the standard extension, I think it's October 5th.
Yes.
To October 5th, 2018.
I've got a letter here that says, "Dear Mr. Gordon, I am writing to request the board to extend the plans which expires October 5th, 2017 for the Tucker Farm definitive subdivision plan. I look forward to hearing from you and the board at your earliest convenience. Do I have a motion to accept the extension to October 5th of 2018?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next permit administration request is from A.J. Comer for the president of Green Boys Landscape, requesting his annual extension for a site plan on the proposed building that you approved for Route 20.
Here we have a letter. It says, "Hi Alan, per our conversation yesterday, please submit our extension for approval to the board." They're looking to extend it to October 4th of 2018. Do I have a motion to accept it?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Alan, could you just check
Oh, sure. Thank you. Good point. Appreciate it. And the next one, and I'd like to explain an update that Mr. Lyon gave me. Bill Lyon, the Vice President of Sun Connect in Naples, Florida. They're the company that is leasing a portion of the Charlton Orchards property for a future solar that you approved. And he's looking also for an approval extension to October 7th, 2018. But then I'll give you an update on what he asked me to tell you about where the project is.
Dear Mr. Gordon, I'm writing to inform you that we are seeking an extension of the all permits in your jurisdiction for the Charlton Orchard Solar Project at 44 Old Worcester Road that expires on October 7th, 2017. We are going through some rough designs and we'll be reaching out to you soon regarding the same. He's looking for an extension to 10/7/2018. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. What he asked me to update you on is they'll be coming back at some point with a revision application. The farm is about 87 acres, and at the moment, what you approved was them to lease about a 5 to 6 acre portion for a 1.3 megawatt. And they'd like to redesign the project as they've worked with National Grid, and also they're talking with the property owner, owns the farm, about relocating the entire project to a different side of the farm, designing it and coming in. But in the meantime, keeping this one just active, because you never know if for some reason they just stick with this. But he said that's not their game plan. So at some point over the winter, they'll be back, and they'll be proposing what I just described.
Still got a few minutes.
Yep.
Anything on?
A few others we can do now if you don't mind. I want to go over this with you. When you sent the letter dated September 11th to District 3, the highway director there, I told you that I got a very positive phone call from the Treehouse people, thanking you, saying they were thinking the same thing about the concern. And did we have any advice on the best way to take the first step? So I suggested they call over to District 3, and then the planning board and I would be glad to get involved in any way. She thanked me at the time, and I haven't heard anything on that direction, but we got a response the other day that I'm frankly disappointed with from District 3 itself, and I'd like to give it to you and point out one item in it. It's pretty brief.
Absolutely.
If you want me to read sections of it or just yourselves, but I just wanted to point out one particular comment they made that I have a concern with. It's an odd response.
But it isn't like no one. There isn't like a line of cars that are waiting to go in. It's because people don't know that it's there. It
It's
isn't
coming up.
It seems like they don't understand what the real problem is.
And
I thought you made it clear in the letter, but they're not digesting it. They're saying, we don't put up signs for private companies. Well, actually they do.
yes.
Yeah.
There's thousands of them around the
Yeah.
state. Maybe I'm being insulting, but I'm wondering if a staffer read it and just didn't want to get involved and fired off this letter. It's very strange.
Yeah. And
No.
I maybe
Internal circulation. What does that have to do with it?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Again, it's like they're not reading what you wrote.
right.
It's very strange.
It's almost like they don't want to admit it's something they overlook.
No, it's probably a government worker who wanted to go home and wrote the letter at 3:30 and they leave at 4. So maybe we need a follow up.
What I
Yeah.
was going to suggest is, it's not CC'd to anybody. I'm wondering if you wanted me to contact Kim, the staffer at Treehouse who reached out to us, share it with her, and see if they want to have a conversation with them and or us to follow up on it. It just seems very odd that they're just washing their hands and saying there's nothing we can do to work with you on this. if it's a question of cost, I'm sure Treehouse would be very interested in.
I think that's how the process works, is usually the business owner pays for the sign.
Yeah.
Mass Highway has it made, and then they erect
You
it.
see them all over the state.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
they can't add their own sign inside of
No,
20, right?
no,
Because
it's in the
strict
right of
rules
way.
for that.
It's the right of way. And it can only be a certain size and certain specs to it.
Is this, like you were saying, Alan, is there some way you could contact Treehouse Brewery,
Sure.
show them the letter that we got, and think that they may have misunderstood it, and would they like you to just contact this Barrett guy?
In any manner, whether it's a phone conversation, a sit down, I'd be glad to. And, you know, Kim, I don't remember her last name, but Kim from Treehouse, who works for Damian Goodrow, like I said, was very complimentary in thinking along the lines of the board. So if I could share this letter with them through her, and then try to follow up jointly with District 3, I'd be glad to.
As far as those, the guy was suggesting those yellow poles that they put in to keep traffic from crisscrossing. They do Route 20 now.
Yeah.
What would hurt them to do another 100 feet of it, 200 feet of it?
It's just gonna defer the problem, so they're gonna make an illegal U-turn somewhere. Instead of making a left, they already have cones, so you can only go right turn
Correct.
from exiting. If you put them down the center, they're gonna probably turn into Sampson Road, make a 3-point turn, and then pull back out on the Route 20, probably making it worse.
Yeah.
Because of the right-hand turn only, they're already pulling in the Vinnie's
Right.
and making a 3-point turn in his driveway, and then just backing out to head west. So, I don't know.
It's an odd
It
response.
defers the
Just
the
further
problem.
down the road.
I guess as far as Mass DOT's response is kind of,
Strange.
They misunderstood the.
could we, if you don't get any progress with anybody, maybe just forward this to Senator Goby and Representative Durant and
Sure.
say, is this what we should expect from Mass DOT?
Sure. I'd like to give it one shot in partnership with Treehouse to reach
Yeah.
out to them. And then that's a good second
If they're
step.
not forthcoming, let's just kind of see where we can go with other steps.
Because, I mean, just the one sentence statement about, we don't do that. You do it all around the state.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah,
Right.
somebody fired this off, so. Be glad to get on that tomorrow.
All right.
Treehouse, no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We are at 7:15 according to my watch, for the hearing, so. Notice and grab a map.
Yep.
There you go. A lot of interest.
Notice of a public hearing, the Charlton Planning Board proposed zoning map amendment. Pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Charlton Planning Board
A second map.
will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 4th, 2017, at 7:15 in the Planning Board office, the Charlton Municipal Office Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass. On the petitioner of the Planning Board to consider amending Charlton zoning map by rezoning the approximate vicinity of 13.6 acres northerly portion of the 30-acre property herein identified on Charlton's assessor map 36, Block B, parcel 2.5, from its present zoning designation of business enterprise to agricultural A.
Just
A
sign
complete
it.
text and map of the proposals are available at the planning board office and clerk's office for public inspection during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the zoning proposal should appear at the time of the place designated. Alan, if you'd start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief, and then Mrs. Boucher, if she'd like to add anything or answer any questions. The property owner came to you a few months back and wanted to head to a town meeting the week after next to rezone the northern part of the property. It's a 30-acre parcel. There's frontage down on the southern part, directly on Route 20, and we've talked with them over the years of eventually, because it's zoned BEP, getting some development in the way of economic development. But the northern part, this makes sense. Taking about 13.5 acres and pulling over the agricultural A zone, and it would be residential because it's up near the houses on Carroll Hill. It's not directly fronted on Route 20 and such. It would provide more of a residential buffer and such. And when they first came to you with the petition, they talked about some ideas they had for what the residential would be. but first step is to go to town meeting, get the map revised, and then step 2, come back to the planning board with whatever type of permit reviews are required for, whether it's subdivision, reduced frontage special permit, an A&R, anything like that. So that's a summary of what it is. She hired Burton Engineering, and Frank Bashiri did a fantastic job of what you require. A map that shows exactly what the change is and clearly explains it, that goes along with the petition. There's 2 copies in front of you with the same map.
Great.
Any questions from the board at this time?
This is consistent with what we discussed previously, correct?
Yes, exactly.
No, it's great.
It's good.
I see there's no public concern, so we won't get a public comment.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Make a,
Motion.
are there any, there's no conditions right now?
No,
I'll make
just
a-
recommending to town meeting.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the zone change to town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The chairman will present at the town meeting.
Okay,
The board just always recommends that you're there with us.
okay, so October 16th, right? That's what time is
It starts at 7 p.m.
And is it the middle school?
Yes. There's other warrant articles, about 10 or 11 before it.
Now, will they let me sit with you guys? See,
No.
Spencer, they only make the non-voters sit away.
It's the same thing, they'll have a section for you to sit in.
Okay.
We'll
Just
sit
in
there
there,
and
it's
go with
usually-
you.
It's usually in the front right, I
Okay.
believe, right?
Okay, maybe they put you on the back.
No.
No, this is front
We
right.
put you in, we punish you and put you right up front. We don't let you hide in the back with the rest of us. Those are
I'm
reser-
used to it.
Those are reserved.
That's where my town manager makes me sit now in Spencer.
Yeah.
That's town.
Okay.
We'll see you
Okay.
on the 16th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I owe you money for the ad?
Not yet, we haven't gotten the bill yet.
No, we
You
haven't.
haven't got the bill yet?
No.
All right,
Jane will
just
call you when it comes
let me
up.
know, and if I see you at the town meeting, I'll give you the check. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're not quite 7:25. Do you have one small item?
Yes. I'll pick one. Let's see. Is it Treehouse? If I can take a few minutes just on your October schedule, because it's a busy month. We're gonna meet next Wednesday for a quick special meeting on the other zoning warrant article requested by Water Sewerage. I'd request one other quick item, which is the next agenda item, which I'll get to in a minute, which would take 5 minutes that night too. And then we have the town meeting, as the board just mentioned, on Monday, October 16th. You've got 3 articles of interest, both zoning articles and Blackwell Drive, which is Cleve Blair's street acceptance. And then back on October 18th, we have another regular planning board meeting. And just to let you know, where it looks like right now for November 1st, they haven't come in yet, but it looks like you'll have 2 new site plans for that evening to start, and probably continue both of them for at least 2 meetings. So we're pretty booked for the next month. One of them is a solar project, by the way. And one more item before we get to the time, just the status report on Hammond Woods. It seemed like it was going at a good clip for a little while, but it's been very slow in there. There's progress on the granite curbing installation. There's one gentleman who seems to be working on it from time to time, and they cleared out a lot of the stumps, but the past couple of weeks, there's not much happening, and we're now 2/3 of the way through the 90-day period on the 4 items. One of them was granite curbing, another one was sidewalks, and I don't have it in front of me, I think it was loaming and seeding in the right-of-way in front of the houses that have been built. And the 4th item, maybe clearing the stumps, but we notified him in writing. So for the if I had to report after 30 days, I'd say he was at a good clip, but now that we're at 60 days, not much is happening in there. We have 30 more days or so. I think November 9th is the deadline, that they need to put it back on another agenda and meet with the developer.
Is the cistern up and running yet?
It looks like it is. I can check with the fire chief, but it looks like it's definitely been covered up
Yep.
properly. And I'll ask the chief if it's been filled and tested. It appears to be so, but I'll ask him. I will also commend Hammond Woods that in the first month, they created from scratch one of the detention areas that was behind the cistern that's massive. And I went up there a few times and they were working steadily on that. They completed it, they loamed it, they seeded it. But after that was done, all you see is fits and starts on the granite curving. So
I went by yesterday and they were doing some of the granite curving where the road enters onto the town road. We're just doing the two sides. They were just doing that yesterday.
Yeah.
But I drove by again today, they weren't working there.
Yeah.
But they may have been somewhere else on the project.
The side road, that's a dead-end cul-de-sac, that's just about done with granite curbing around the entire cul-de-sac, both the center and the sides. They've broken out the radius turns throughout the subdivision, but again, I just see one person working on it sometimes, and other times, I was in there yesterday too, there was no one to be found.
Do we know total percentage completed? That's kind of
On the granite, well, on the granite curbing, it's well over half, but then there's more detention basin work, nothing on sidewalk prep at all, nothing on the rest of it. You know, if you work hard, you can get it done in a month, but I'm not getting the feeling after 60 days down, 30 to go, that he's gearing up. I think he'll be back on the
What
board's
is normal
agenda.
practice? Send them a little reminder or make a call, just check it out, or do we just kind of hold off? No, it's kind of overkill.
You gave him the 90.
Yeah.
They're not gassed.
Yeah, it's more like
They're open.
open.
So we'll see, we'll keep on it week to week.
Alright. Yeah, do Bay Path.
Bay Path, I let John LaFleche know today, we had it last week, and normally you meet every 2 weeks. Tonight is that 1 week in between. And Graves could not finish the review in time because of the extent of it and also just where they were this particular week. So I called John LaFleche and told him I'd recommend just, rather than make him wait 2 weeks for a regular schedule, I have no problem recommending you add this on to your special agenda next week and have 2 items. No reason why not.
Small item.
Yep, Graves will definitely be all set for next Wednesday. And then you can approve it that night, subject to routine conditions.
So we'll continue the public hearing to next week.
Yes, I recommend you vote to continue it to the 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good, we can go home. Done.
What I recommend, we have the time and we're right on schedule with everything. Do you want to take this time slot to do some signing, waiting for the 7:35 hearing?
Either that or do you want to go through some of the minutes?
That would be a good idea, sure.
Yeah, we had some minutes.
Yeah.
Get caught up.
Yep.
If we can start with the April 19th.
Make a motion to accept them as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We go to the May 3rd.
On page 2, down at the bottom, just repeated Graves Engineering Incorporated twice. The third line up from the bottom.
Yep, got it, thank
And on the next page, right above the 725, so the board agreed to vote on the policy at the next meeting. And, okay, never mind, the next meeting we did, okay, that's,
you. Page 2.
yeah. That was okay.
Any other questions for the May 3rd?
Actually, just that one little change in that.
Make a motion to approve the May 3rd minutes with the adjustments.
With the adjustments? or-
Adjustments stated, the grammatical.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If we could 17th draft.
That's the one that I didn't see where we voted on that policy. I don't see it in May 17th. On how the billing is.
Oh, okay, for the, doing the escrow and stuff.
He presented it at the May 3rd, but no vote
Oh,
was
okay,
taken,
so-
saying that was gonna be taken on the 17th,
Gotcha.
but I don't see
Okay.
where we voted on it on the 17th.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
So we sort of need to vote on that, I guess?
Okay.
I have a question on 725, the Rockaway, where it says a 50-foot long dead-end roadway. Because it's gonna be privately owned, do we call it a roadway?
Yes, it will still be a roadway, but he'll just end up not conveying it to the town.
Okay.
But legally, it's still the right term.
I know you always
Good question.
correct people on,
Driveway.
Driveway.
Good question.
so what is the discussion going with the 17th? Did we,
Yeah, I
we
have,
gonna check the vote?
we have to, you should vote.
We
Because
should
I didn't
take
have
the
it.
vote.
Yeah.
So actually, the minutes are okay as presented for the 17th. We just didn't vote on it.
Subject to adding, prior to filing with the clerk, adding a few sentences about adopting the escrow policy. Would that be okay?
Actually, you need to take a whole vote, no? We never voted as a board to adopt it.
No, we said we were
Yes.
going to vote and we just never did.
Yeah,
Right.
so I'll add it and then you,
We didn't vote it at the meeting, we adopted it as a policy.
It says the board agreed to vote on the above policy at the next planning board meeting on May 17th, but we just
but then
never
it
did it on May
wasn't.
7th.
So you just gotta add it.
Because there were two
You did it,
people.
it's just not in the minutes. You mean.
We don't know that.
I don't remember.
I don't
Yeah.
recall that far back.
I'm
I
pretty sure we
don't
did.
recall.
I'll
voting.
look it.
Yeah.
So if it's not there, we'll just have to
I
add
would
it to our
recommend
next
you
meeting.
play it safe and vote it tonight no matter what, because we have 3 coming in with escrow payments in the near future. So if you can, I mean, if you already did it, great, and if you didn't, by doing it tonight, you're covered either way.
Right.
Because I've informed the next 3 that are coming in, including the 2 coming in for November 1st, that our policy is to require the escrow payment rather than reimbursal.
Okay, what was the wording we want to use then?
Just approve them as
they're
they
written.
are.
As it's
May
written.
17th.
As
Yeah.
it's written on
Yeah.
May,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
As you see up here.
And then before the
Second.
evening is over.
Yeah.
vote it.
yeah, second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brad, all set? Yours too, Brad?
Nice catch, Gene.
No, I didn't.
We did the vote on the 17th?
Minutes.
Oh, that was to approve the,
Right.
Yeah.
policy of the vote. I make a motion to approve the May 17th minutes.
With the
I
addition?
thought we just did that. With what addition?
I thought we just approved the,
We just approved May 17th.
As written.
As
I
written.
thought we just approved the, fees for the summer.
No.
No, we'll do
I
that.
think we'll do that as a subsequent
Yeah.
motion
Mm.
in our regular agenda
Okay.
to make it cleaner. Because we can't vote today to add it to those minutes.
Right.
Right.
If
We
we're
don't
not
know.
sure it was discussed, we're better
Right.
off just to
Yeah, power on.
make another motion on that item tonight.
Can we look at the June 7th
Yeah.
meeting?
Under Hammond Woods subdivision discussion,
Yep.
we have Alan as town planner.
Planning director.
That should be planning director.
Good catch.
Make a motion to approve June 7th with the changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We could look at the July 12th.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we got the, August 9th.
Do we have a 6/21 meeting?
We have a couple sets that we have put aside.
Okay.
Yeah.
August 23rd.
Come up
Page
later.
3,
Yeah, the next, not the 11th, but
it's just the word from and for and from. Remaining items from.
what page was
Page
that?
3 under the 730, Rockaway. Board review, Graves Engineering, remaining items from the.
Yep.
And, oh, another one here. Under the Hammond Woods, discussion ensued. Member Pete Gloria made a motion to establish 90 days, but there's no second and no vote.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely have that in mind.
Okay, I thought I should make that, I wasn't at the meeting.
No, that's a good catch.
Yeah, that's
You're just
fine.
pointing it out.
Oh,
That's
okay.
fine.
No big deal.
Make a motion we approve with the changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the last is, September 6th.
Motion for bills. I don't think Pete seconded. Pete Stark is probably Pete Gloria.
Yep.
And then down a little bit further. Second paragraph up from the bottom. We have Pete Stark again.
Busy guy.
You was,
Yeah, you were, huh?
Oh, the character.
Yeah. It's that first name. She just got it mixed up, that's
That's
all.
right.
After doing all those minutes, I can see.
You can be me. Any questions on the September 6th, other than the two comments made?
Make a motion we approve with the changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's back on to get continued again. Notice,
Yes.
it was on every set of minutes, I think we just looked at. Continue.
This is a continued session, and if I can just mention things for a minute or two and then turn it over to Frank and Luke, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. As you know, this is the site plan to revise and approve the business park for Ralph Nichols proposed at the intersection of 20, north side of 20, where it meets 169. And they're still working on the next stage of revisions to submit for peer review, but I thought it was a good time, given what they've been doing in the field and what they're planning to do and adjust from the original proposal, for Burton to come in, give an overview to you of what's going on, separate from getting into peer review. That'll be the next session. And just bring the board up to snuff, because I know there's field work and building and conservation are involved. I do have a letter I got this afternoon from one of the abutters that I'd like to give you for your information and also the board, but it really isn't pertaining to what we're reviewing here. It's an abutter expressing concerns about some of the existing field situation, which I answered her by informing her that Kurt Meskis and Todd are handling that. And she, I think, knew it because she copied them on the letter anyway. But just for everyone's information, I'll give that out as the hearing session proceeds. So, thank you. You want to introduce your...
Yeah, Frank McCary with Burton Engineering, along with Professor, also with Burton Engineering. And so here this evening representing Otis Land Management, Ralph Nichols, to present basically the change in direction that we have taken. So which way are we oriented here? So this plan turned out to be very expensive, with roadway improvements, water line, and a lot of the street drainage stuff happening, and the mains and the connections and betterment fees with the connections and such, and it just really wasn't cost feasible. Ralph has property farther up 20 that might be better suited for his bulk plant, and so at some point he might move the operation down there. So he kind of changed directions to see how he could make the best use out of his land, and so we changed directions to self-storage. So we would be coming off of Griffin Road, and there would be basically an office building, a typical self-storage office building with office supplies, and that's where you go sign up for your locker and such. Some parking for that. That would be on well and septic, and come up the driveway. I think we did at 10%, and then coming back, I think we were about 5% all the way back. So pretty even pitch all the way down. Right now, we're still working through the drainage and such. We've roughed in detention basins, done some rough numbers to see that these are adequate. And one thing we were finding is groundwater recharge, because these are in cuts that you need the separation from the groundwater and such. That one of the ideas that we're considering right now is doing strips of porous pavement. Right now, we have 30 feet as the drive lanes, and the reason why they're 30 feet is because people typically, when they do self-storage, just drive up to their unit, and you want to have room to be able to go by them for emergency vehicles or even just other people, getting to units farther in the back. So that's why the drive lanes are so wide. And there's very little parking because people are going to park at their units. We did provide some parking up in this area, multiple people go into the unit or something like that. Some dumpsters, those would be locked because otherwise they'd be way overused for self-storage, so they'd be locked. So you'd have to go down here and say, hey, we're going to empty our unit out, pay a fee, get the key, and that type of thing. We're not proposing any type of fencing or anything because the site's situated fairly remote, in that you have the pike up over here, you're kind of coming up a hill, and you got wetlands over here. There is some residential down over here off of Griffin Road, as well as some commercial on Griffin Road. But they didn't feel that security was going to, they'd probably have cameras to it, but right now we're not proposing fencing for it. If it's required, then we would go ahead and propose fencing, but right now we're not proposing fencing. This cut over here would either be a retaining wall or ledge face. He's already kind of hit some ledge out there. The grading that you see on this was kind of an as-built grading, and the reason why we're doing some in-progress as-built grading, which is pretty unconventional. Typically you have an approved plan and then you have a final plan. A couple of reasons. One, just to see how this would work so he doesn't cut too far for the proposed design. We wanted to know what was out there so we can kind of make sure that what we're proposing isn't too crazy of what he's already done out there per this general plan. The second thing was he put a retaining wall, that we were proposing a retaining wall outside the wetlands, and unfortunately he put it on the wetland line. Went out with Todd to dig some test pits to determine the extent of the wetlands that were filled. Down at this end, we were pretty much on the wetland line, going up to about 10 feet of fill, up until basically the edge of the retaining wall is about 10 feet of fill. What we're proposing, and we just met with Conservation to give them the same update of where we're at with the project, we're proposing that he remove the boulder retaining wall in this area and provide replication down here. That would still need to be worked out with the Conservation, whether they would approve that or not, and so that we'll have to figure out as we move forward. We're leaving generous spaces over here. This would be a great place to do recharge, but I'm not going to do recharge behind a boulder retaining wall. And so we basically left this unused, so if he has to pull the wall out, we can grade it, move the wall back, do the replication. So we gave ourselves a fair amount of area around here to address the wetland concerns. So stormwater, like I said, strips of porous pavement, 30 feet wide, so we would do 10 feet of regular pavement, a 10-foot strip in the middle of the porous pavement, and then 10 feet of conventional pavement. So the water would pitch down to the middle, infiltrate through the porous pavement, and whatever didn't infiltrate through the porous pavement, we'd eventually catch with catch basins and then bring it to the drainage systems. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the groundwater recharge is a concern due to these basins being in cut. And so one way to address that would be through some porous pavement. Not shown on the plan yet because we got to just finish the whole drainage design, but that was one of the ideas that we were taking around to address the drainage concerns. Something that's different than these plans that I think the abutters will appreciate. One, there's not a bulk oil storage next to their wells and septic systems and such, and next to the wetlands. So the self-storage is a pretty innocuous use. It's not a polluter. It's not a higher potential pollutant load. One of the things that we were doing with the self-storage before is thinking of having some contractor units that guys could rent on cars and stuff like that. We're no longer running water services up here, so we wouldn't have the facilities for a contractor unit. Not to say that they couldn't use a basic storage unit to store equipment and stuff like that, but we're not running water or sewer or anything like that, so we wouldn't have any of those facilities. So it would be less burden on the property. And as you can see in this one, we basically did one-to-one riprap to get right up to the property line to really max everything out. These areas we're now proposing to leave as is and not cut so far towards the abutting neighbors, because one of the issues that was raised is concern cutting regarding their wells, some shallow wells, as well as septic systems and possible breakout and such like that. So we're limiting the grading now and doing less in this area, which hopefully makes these guys a little bit happier, as well as a change in use should be a little more amenable to about the residential.
What would you call porous pavement?
So porous pavement is actually, it's an approved BMP in the stormwater policy handbook, and basically the aggregate that they use is all the same size, as opposed to having a gradation that packs down nice and tight. When you have it all the same size, it doesn't really pack down, and it keeps a void space to it. So it actually allows the water to pour into it, and then below that pavement you have a choke layer that basically holds everything in place, and then you have a filter layer that's a special medium that's designed for bacterial treatment, I guess, of the water as it migrates down through.
Hey, Kavasi do something on trolley crossing?
Yeah, it's more for
I'm not
pavers.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
porous pavers.
Yeah, he did pavers with holes in them.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah, this is different.
Yeah.
This is a special mix of the actual pavement. So you prepare it a little different. And so what I envision is kind of straight shots of the porous pavement. So that way, you can pave conventional pavement all the way down, conventional pavement all the way down, and then you can prepare your strip in the middle for your porous pavement because it's a special media. And it's about an 18-inch cross-section overall. And so you get 4 inches, I think, of the porous pavement, and I think it's like a choke layer that's about 2 to 3 inches, so it slows the water down a little bit, and then it's the filter medium below that.
That's not true.
So it allows it to perk back into the ground.
Yeah, so it allows it to percolate back into the ground, and it's cleaning it through that medium that's in there. So by the time it gets into the groundwater, it's clean water. And so the porous pavement, for the bigger storm events like the 100-year storm, wouldn't be able to hold it all. If it can't recharge fast enough, then we would still have conventional drainage systems that would bring it to detention basins to get more attenuation in the bigger storm events. So, but in smaller storms, the idea would be that the porous pavement would generally be able to handle it.
How much depth does it need to ledge if that's an issue?
As far as the porous pavement,
Yes. to
well, I think it
handle-
would be the same thing, that you'd still need a 2-foot separation from groundwater, because basically it's an infiltration system, so you need 2 feet separation from groundwater. So yeah, and so one of the areas that we were looking at, like over here, we wouldn't propose it on this strip right here, because when we cut that, that's going to be ledge, and so we wouldn't be doing the porous pavement here. And so Pete in the office was actually looking at that today of, okay, where are the areas that we know we have that we can do it. So we're considering that as we're doing it.
How does that hold up to snowplows?
It's actually not too bad. It's fine. And if anything, the porous pavement, because of all the air in it, it actually melts the snow better than typical pavement.
But the plow so it doesn't bind.
No,
Correct.
the plow's not going to dig into it and rip it up. No.
It's not.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, it should be. I mean, basically the way we have it graded, it's just it's still solid. It's going to be a continuous plane. Yeah, I wish I knew one around here I could direct you guys to. I know I did peer reviews down in Wareham, and there was a site that used it because they had a lot coverage requirement type thing. And so what they did is they had majority of the parking lot was normal pavement. It all pitched away from the building, and the last bay of parking stalls was the porous pavement, and I was actually down there in a storm event, and you could see the water sheet across and then just disappear. It's pretty
neat.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, and it's been in service for a while now. You know, like I said, it's a DEP approved technology, and you know, it's not great for every application, but I think in this application,
Set a good example for others, though.
yeah, I think in this application it would be a good fix. The alternative would be basically, if we can't get recharge here, what we were proposing previously, we'd go back to something similar. You know, perforated pipes, crushed stone, the more typical infiltration systems that we do. You know, that has a cost associated with it, and the porous pavements, obviously, it's more costly than conventional pavement because of the medium that you need to do. It's a special mix that you need to order, so of course it's going to cost more. But you know, we got to sell it to Ralph. But I think the cost benefit is that you're not putting in a lot of piping. You know, and it's you're going to put pavement down anyway. So what's the differential cost? You know, but you know, it's that differential that I think you make your savings on because you'd be putting pavement there anyway. You know, so.
Does the detention pond have an outlet that goes anywhere special?
So what we're going to do here is it's basically going to be a level spreader spillway, and it's right now everything comes down the hill to the Route 20 drainage system. We can't discharge directly into the Route 20 drainage system. Ideally, you'd outlet the detention basin right into the system, but they don't let you do that. So what we need to do is spill it out over land. And so what we're going to do is rip-wrap in level spreaders. And the level spreaders are basically just a concrete beam, so the water at that set level, the water hits it, spreads across it, and goes down, and to avoid channelization. And so we would have outlets, level spreader, and then stone, and then it would eventually make its way down to the Route 20 drainage system.
Now, Alan, I got a question for you. Does, with the change in use, does it change the traffic trip meter?
It lowers it from
Okay.
what was triggered before when we approved him several years ago as an office park.
Yeah.
The ITE trip generation for office park triggered a mandatory negotiation with DOT's District 3 office that was requiring, and there are conditions in that original approval, requiring an off-site signalization upgrade that DOT would administer the process, but the developer's traffic engineering consultant would install it and test it. That's not required at this level of ITE trip generation. So all of that goes. There was an extensive subdivision roadway through the whole project with that level of traffic. Now it's just a driveway, and the amount of traffic you get for strictly self-storage does not mandate any of that off-site improvement.
All right. Okay.
And all the information that we gave you for this, we'll update all that, and you'll get a whole new package.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, but yeah,
Good question.
no, that's a good question. But yeah, that'll all be updated once we finalize all the drainage and really lock it in and have.
Do the neighbors get any shrubbery planted for buffering? Because I know this one shows some buffers,
Right.
some shrubs. Is there anything on that one?
You know, that's something that, here we're going to leave the existing trees. Up here, it's actually a cut, so they'd actually be looking out over it. But that's definitely something that we can.
There's no direct line of sight.
Oh, there isn't?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that we'll consider if they come and say, hey, this is going to be a problem, and we think we're going to see it. We can we can show some cross sections to
Could
see.
you do some visual cross sections that your company did before on a couple of the solar projects, so the
Yep.
abutters will feel comfortable at the next hearing session?
Yep.
Thank you.
Have the abutters been informed about this change in use?
Not yet, because he hasn't submitted it.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
So
there are
this-
3 or 4 abutters who
Right.
asked the next time we get to peer review, could I call them and tell them that session is coming up? I do have something to go over from Kimberly Burlingham when you
Yep.
get to it, though.
Sure.
And how many units are there?
I honestly don't know.
I see a lot.
Yeah,
I see a lot of buildings.
Yeah, well,
some are
and right now I
units.
think we just did 10 by 10s and 10 by 20s, and just however, I think it was like 50,000 square feet, so however many units that turns out to.
We'll need,
I
as
honestly don't
part
know.
of the final, we'll need that
Yep.
finalized.
Yep. I think it was still in flux that we added kind of this last part, I think, in the last day or two, so.
It's just a
I
progress
forget the
report.
total.
10 by 20s, 200 square feet.
Yeah, 10 by 10s, 10 by 20s.
50,000?
I think
2,500 units? 250, 2,500.
Well, each one of these I think is. Yeah, 25. Each one of these is 50. So 50, 100, 200, 250, 300, 400, 500, 550, 750. So something.
Would you trigger a NEPA review for something on the scale?
I don't think so, because it's the square, it's the impervious. I don't think the, yeah, I don't think we hit the square, I don't think we hit the traffic or the total
And again,
impervious.
it's not a daily, hourly use of every one of them,
Right.
so your traffic level, just give us a brief ITE trip generation report along with it.
Yep,
That'll
traffic,
help.
traffic, cross-sections, number of units.
That'll show the actual calculated traffic flow in and out
Yeah,
over
and,
normal time periods.
and now that we aren't, we're coming off of Griffin Road, even if we had a threshold, I don't think we have a NEPA trigger because we don't have any state permits. It's all local permits, because with NEPA you need a threshold and a trigger, and typically the trigger is a state permit or state financing, so a lot of times it puts you into NEPA. So in order of conditions, I found this out not too long ago, even though it's issued by DEP, it's administered locally, so it's considered a local permit. If you get a superseding order of conditions, that's considered a state permit. So if you have a project that has a threshold and you're denied by conservation and you get a superseding order, you just enacted a trigger and now you're NEPA. So that was a little bit of an education for me, because I was like, oh, well, what about anything in the wetland would have a state permit, but then we actually got it from Judy Schnitz, I think, one of the directors, and she emailed us and said, nope, it needs to be a superseding order to be a state permit. Didn't know if we were doing stuff on Route 20 still, that would be a access permit, that would be DOT, that would be a state permit. So if we had the threshold, that would be a trigger
interesting.
for that. So yeah, but I'll double check that now that we have a different program.
So subdivisions can never trigger NEPA?
Actually, they do. You're talking about most of the triggers. There are
Well,
subdivision.
there are some other ones.
There are subdivision triggers that are stated on A, acreage if it's a mega subdivision.
I just
B,
thought- okay.
yeah, B, linear foot of water line and sewer line, and C, capacity in water sewer line. But he's talking about the main triggers. There's like 80 of them.
Right.
Yeah,
I know there's a
the most
bunch.
common ones. Yeah, there's
Okay.
threshold and trigger. So any big project, you kind
For
of
instance-
you hit a threshold and then you need the trigger for it. So.
Tonight, we gave an annual extension approval for Smith Road, RH White, and that went through NEPA because of the size of it and a few other triggers. But you're right, most of them are what you said. Absolutely, 98%
So
of
I
them
don't
are.
mean to speak in absolutes, but
Oh, yeah,
generally
sorry,
speaking.
Yeah.
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 No, it's a good question though.
Could I summarize, one for,
Oh, isn't it? Sorry. I just-
yeah,
Oh, okay.
to the Burton folks. Let me just summarize and just share that with you. Kimberly Burlingham has submitted comments prior to, at earlier stages of it. She grew up in one of the houses, her parents are in a butter, and Kimberly is technically proficient because she's the assistant conservation agent for the town of Framingham. So we've had discussions before. She's not against the project, she's concerned about certain design elements. So I can point out just a few things, and I did respond to her today. She sent this to me and Todd and Kurt, and I responded that I'll share it with the planning board. But regarding what's happening at the field at the moment, pre-building permit, Todd and Kurt are working with Burton Engineering, and I suggested that I'll defer to those two to get back to her on. But I want to point out, on page 2, she mentions that she and her family are observing that there have been some stones that have rolled off the fill slope onto her family's property, number one.
Okay.
Number 2, they feel there's also an increase in some drainage across the property line, that obviously when we get to final site plan approval, we have to assure that the design does not increase the runoff. She's requesting a SWIP, but you do a SWIP anyway, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I will tell her as we get to the next peer review is that we do require a SWIP, and Graves always points that out anyway, and you'll submit
I
it.
believe we submitted one in the original submittal.
Yeah,
so.
you'll just revise it to this.
Yeah.
And then one other point I wanted to make, if I can just find it, if you'll pardon me, is she had requested a site visitor meeting from the planning board at this stage, but I would really defer to Kurt and Todd because it's their jurisdiction at the moment, prior to the planning board finalizing and issuing a site plan. Once we issue site plan, we would get involved with any concerns from an abutter, but I talk to Todd and Kurt regularly about this. They provide photos, they work with you. If you can just tell us again, to summarize in response, where you are with the site issues at the moment with conservation and building?
Well, so I actually haven't spoken with Kurt regarding this. I've spoken with Todd, and we just gave the Conservation Commission a briefing, the similar one that I gave to you, and they're basically, okay, finalize it and bring us what you got, and we'll comment on it.
Okay.
You know, so that's kind of where we are with them.
But in terms of the work that was done in the
Right.
wetlands, you're working with them to remediate that, right?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
yeah, and that's gonna be part of this plan that comes before you, right? We're not doing it immediately right now, it's gonna be part of the site plan, it's gonna be integrated into it, so it'll be part of the order of conditions, and part of your approval will be the replication and fixing anything that's happened to the wetlands.
I think in response to a couple of her concerns about current sedimentation runoff and drainage,
Yep.
you'll probably be contacted by either Kurt or Todd to go out and
Yeah,
look
no,
at
that's
it.
definitely something that, if something like that's happening, that's part of, order of conditions and any standard thing that he needs to make sure his hay bales and.
When you revise the
Not
SWIP,
running
if we can
outside.
just get 3 copies for Graves, ourselves, and we always share it with Conservation, so,
Yep.
thank you. If I can just ask a couple of quick scheduling, roughly when do you think you'll be resubmitting as you work on this, and then I assume you're looking to wrap it up over the winter for springtime commence construction? Is that it?
Yeah, so I think we'll be done, generally speaking, in about 2 to 3 weeks. So whatever subsequent agenda that would put us on, if we get a target, we'll work harder to hit the target type of thing. So, like I said, I think 2 to 3 weeks would be plenty of time. We're pretty far along with the drainage and getting these sized up, making sure they work. And so I don't think there's a lot left as far as drainage goes, and then it's just the detailing of it. So I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, and we should have it pretty well buttoned up.
The office building ends up with a well and a septic system.
Mm-hmm.
Is it identified on there?
Right now, we just have a little footprint for the septic, and I'm not sure if he's put the well on here yet or not. But we would be 100 feet away
There's plenty of room.
from the septic, but yeah, there's plenty of room, so it'd be up there somewhere.
Perfect.
The only other working item is, we did one for Doug Monson, and the fire department reviewed it and had some concerns about the edges of a couple of the buildings, and required about 15 to 20 of the units to be clipped off during our site plan review.
Okay.
So now that this is at this level of storage, you could either proactively go to the fire department now to commence that review, or when we get it, we'll have them review it.
So it was turning radiuses, was
Yes.
it? Oh, so the corners weren't cutting it and the radiuses? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like there's gonna be some issues there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we,
Turnaround?
I was gonna say, you can.
There's no straight shot.
Well,
so to
yeah.
meander a 40-foot fire truck through there.
Well, and this is also at a pretty good scale. What is it? 60. But like I said, these are 30 feet wide, so you have extra width. So these are wider than typical, but we'll definitely do maneuvering templates, and if we need to give wider aisles to make that turn, then we will.
I know in the Monson one, they were more concerned with the periphery than the interior.
Right,
I
okay.
think they could work with you more on interior, but it was the edges.
Yeah, I think making this. Yeah,
That type
so
of thing.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
take a look at it. And like I said, the scale that this is at, I think it's a little deceiving because these are wider than typical. So that's definitely a valid concern.
Is something like that get exterior lighting?
Yep, and that's something that I'll have to talk about with Ralph. I think the units would have lighting on them.
We need a photometric plan.
Yeah, in the parking lot, we'd probably put a light pole for the parking lot. We'd put a light pole, there'd be some lighting for this. There'd be a light pole for that guy. Yeah, but those are the detail things that we still, really was just making the grading and drainage work was kind of our priority. That's the, that needs to work, and then everything else is kind of detailing afterwards, but those are definitely will be addressed. Great.
So we'll continue this.
Sounds good. Do you want to give us a request on a particular point that you want to continue it to? And if you make it, fine. If not, we continue it. Looking at the calendar,
So the second November meeting?
that would be November 15th.
Yep. Yeah, we'll definitely be ready for that. That's a month away, so.
Great.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to continue the public hearing to November 15th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you, Frank.
That's how it works.
All right. Did I miss the last? Excuse me, last?
Yeah, 'cause we had a gap before the public hearing. So,
This is Charlton. Go build his up.
A shed.
Shed.
yeah, well, look at coffee.
Yeah, it's got to be saturated pretty soon.
Yeah.
I don't know, the guys live across the street from one. It's
Did Munson start his yet, behind you?
No, he hasn't applied for the building
That's a-
permit. We
that's a-
green-lighted him.
That's a big project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We green-lighted him maybe 2 months ago, and he just hasn't come in.
Yeah.
He was chomping at the bit to come in that week. Couldn't do it. Finance.
Okay.
Cheapest thing to build.
Yeah.
You got,
Oh,
Yeah.
Annual goals and objectives, just wanted to ask before we finalize and hand out. I'm adding in what the chairman asked for of our marketing effort, continuing it. If there was anything else we could add in, and then I'll just finalize as, and don't worry if you don't put something in the course of the year, it's just a guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If there was anything else.
Alan, do you want to touch on that Graves billing process before we forget again?
Yes, if we could do
So-
that. Again, we might have, I'll double check, but just to play it safe, if you can vote this evening to establish the management policy that for the subdivision, site plan, and special permits, the initial application, we require a $2,000 upfront escrow, and most communities, planning boards have been requiring it one of the last ones, rather than we start with a reimbursal process.
So that doesn't mean that that entire amount is going to get spent. That's-
Usually it will,
Alright.
yeah, but if there was anything that wasn't spent, they get it back with interest.
Correct.
Absolutely.
That's a slush fund.
Yeah, and each is a separate account,
So that's just a start.
yes.
All right, I'll make a motion, we approve the billing process that was presented on May 17th, May
Second.
3rd.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the last thing I have is just the latest grade spreadsheet of active projects that they're managing in the field for us, dated October 2nd. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One for Jane, one for each board member. And those are my items, Mr. Chairman.
How was it? Did you go?
Let me give you this back up.
Ah, thank you.
I'll grab it. Was he happy with? He does.
Where's the,
It was open to, they opened the floor to.
we can do a front connection site plan approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just the Charlton Orchard
Close it.
Yeah.
extension request.
Yeah.
It's still open.
No other discussion at this time, Alan?
None, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any discussion from the board?
Nope.
Do I have a
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Whoa, second.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.